Avatar? Well, the collector boxes may be making a recovery that nobody saw coming. Avatar may not be Final Fantasy, but the sales are definitely moving in the right direction. Welcome back, everyone. MTG Moxman here, and thank you again for hanging out today for another video. Now, Avatar's releasing. It's here. It's upon us. A lot of players are already looking past it to sets like Lorwyn Eclipsed or The Hobbit in 2026. But when we're looking smack dab in the face of what's going on with Avatar, it really is surprising to see the yo-yo of events that have affected the sealed market for this product. This is crazy stuff, I know, because we have seen this product drop dead because of Spider-Man's negativity on its collector boxes, to spoiler season being well received and players piping up about how much they're liking it, and then Spider-Man coming back. Now, either way, the prices have gone up and down, but this close to release, we kind of know where things are going to fall, and honestly, I'm pretty excited about it. We know that the singles for this set are well received and players are looking forward to playing them. We know the pre-releases are selling really well and are probably going to sell out. Although I don't think it'll be sold out the way Tarkir Dragonstorm was. I'm going to equate part of that to just the way the economy is moving right now. But the overall sales related to these sealed collector boxes have actually been gaining momentum, which is unusual this late before release. Usually things have calmed down at this point, but it looks like the sales are still ramping up. Now, if I showed you something here on TCG Player, and yeah, we know we got Black Friday this month on the 28th, but when we're looking at these sales, players aren't really taking any chances. Even as the things are drifting up in price, the sales are staying very consistent. When we check at places locally and across Canada and the US, we can see many of the small LGSs are completely sold out. Maybe they saved a box for cracking themselves, but the basic report is we don't have any left to sell. Bigger stores, they went from saying 100 boxes down to say 10, which is pretty impressive for only 5 or 6 days. It just tells you that in this last moment of FOMO, players have decided to buy the product. They're going to open this stuff and they're going to take their chances on Avatar. Now, when we look at the sealed products like Play Booster boxes, they've stayed fairly consistent since spoiler season began. As well as the bundle packs, these things have a certain sales record that is pretty much telling you that this is where players spend a lot of money. Now, I'm not saying it's always a breaking record, but it is very consistent across the market of anywhere I look. It is the most consistent sale is always a bundle pack. Play booster boxes always tend to lag behind. And in this case, it looks like the sales, again, are picking up. Now, this is great for LGSs. It's great for stores that were worried about selling their product, but it also leaves that now feeling about what comes next, because we know the Avatar sales will end quite quickly. Players who want to get it have bought it. Now we have some scalpers and investors kind of dabbling in the market and picking up some extra boxes, because generally speaking, an average player doesn't buy 20 boxes, right? But when you see these sales happen, you still got to report them and let you guys know what's happening. But generally, I consider that a scalper, an investor, somebody who wants to hold on to the boxes for a long period of time. Those players buying a single box, you're going to open it. Those people buying a single Play Booster box, you're opening it, whether to play with, to draft with, whatever the experience you're expecting from that product that's sealed, you're going to be taking a chance on it. When people buy 50 boxes, well, they're going to be holding on to those for a longer period of time, somewhere in the future. Now, the next thing I want to touch on here is a little bit different, because it's not just about how well Avatar's doing. It's the overall consensus of the market for Magic the Gathering as we see it. And we're going to branch this conversation, because if you're now 4 minutes into this video, it'd be kind of short to just say that's what's happening with Avatar, but honestly, that's what's happening. So I want to take a moment here to branch the rest of this video into a different conversation, but very related to MTG Finance and how it affects the new cards that have been printed in 2024 and 2025. Now, in case you weren't aware, there is a section of cards called the Reserve List. It is 572 cards that can never be printed again. Any variation of the card is just a no-no. Now, of course, for anyone who's fairly new to the game, Wizards of the Coast has attempted reprints in the past, and they've been slapped down each and every time, usually for the right reasons. Now, in the case of 30th Anniversary, they were greedy, they overcharged for the packs, and they deserve to be slapped around. I think most people would not have had a problem with the 30th anniversary if they had gone $10 a pack, give it to the LGSs, they would have made a ton of money, and basically a whole generation of Magic players would have been introduced to a style of Magic that hasn't existed since 1993. And the reason I'm bringing this up is when we look at new cards in 2024, and we look at the cards in 2025 and going into 2026, Wizards of the Coast has done their best to evolve the game to include many expensive variant types of cards. These cards can have halo foils, different alternate artworks, raised, halo, confetti, you name it, black and white, I don't care. Amazing artwork on amazing cards. Even if they are a reprint of some other version that exists, they are worth extensive amounts of money. Huge. Some of these cards are $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. If you look at the Soul Stone variant, it's a $25,000 to $35,000 card US. Now, that's where I want to bring this conversation, because how expensive are reserve list cards comparatively speaking? And where is the reserve list going? And what Wizards of the Coast, I believe, should do to fix the problem of the reserve list. Now, if I shared a card with you right now, this is Null Rod. This is from Weatherlight. Take a look at the end chart, and you can see here in the last couple of days, this card shot up in sales. I mean, huge. It will be on the reserve list top 10 this weekend. If this card is not number 1, it is going to be near the top. When we look at this card and you take a closer look at the card, you can see here the average price is $125 for this generic 2 casting cost artifact that says players cannot play any artifact abilities requiring an activation cost. You get it? That means you can't tap for mana rocks, you can't do anything. This thing just stops it all. It's a great card. It's a sideboard in most cases in a lot of competitive vintage legacy decks, but this thing also has a home in Commander. Now, if we jump over though and we look at the sales, I'm talking the sales numbers are seriously high. This is no joke to see a card at this value point selling this many copies in this market at this time. This is just unheard of for many cards. This isn't like Dystopia, which had a massive amount of sales, but it was like a $8, $9 card. This thing started at like $60, $70, and it's just spiked up this point. This is another card on the reserve list that can't get reprinted in form of function. This is a card that is never coming back and has a limited supply. And as the world of Magic the Gathering expands the population, as the player base grows over the decades to come, a card like this will become rarer and rarer to find. The population of Magic players who know about a card like this will become more and more distanced. And yes, there will always be players who will educate others on reserve list cards, no doubt. But this is a problem that does need to be rectified. You see it like we talked about for the 30th anniversary, and Wizards getting slapped around because they overcharged for a product that everyone should have been able to enjoy at $10 a pack. They would have made their money, they wouldn't have had the fights they would have had to deal with, and of course this would have introduced an entire new generation of Magic players to a Magic selection of cards that no longer exists. A style of Magic that can no longer be played unless you're one of those elite old school players that is out there playing it because you had the cards as a kid or you've managed to purchase them over the years. I don't want Magic the Gathering's original type of Magic to ever disappear. I think it needs to be preserved and protected. And the reserve list deserves to be protected. The value of those cards, the iconic nature of the reserve list deserves to be protected. But it does need to evolve. It does need to change over time. And I think Wizards of the Coast has demonstrated the path in which this can happen. You see, when we look at all these new cards coming up, these halo, confetti, foils, these specialty cards, serialized cards, those cards are holding their values way past the point I ever would have thought possible. It is showing that the longevity of the player base believing in the value of those cards and holding those cards as true points of value, well, if those cards are valuable and they're brand new, imagine how valuable an old school card is. Well, wait, we know, because we just saw that Null Rod's $130, which is a far cry from any of the new cards we've seen in those special editions, right? Makes sense. So Null Rod, you would think, would be $10,000, consider how difficult that card is and how amazing the function of the card is for the decks it could be built into. I mean, it's a strong sideboard card in all kinds of legacy vintage decks. It gets played in Commander all the time. So where does that leave players believing versus the playability of a card? The belief of value versus the playability. Wizards has shown the way, I believe, in how this can be evolved into something. I've talked before how I believe the reserve list needs to be expanded. We need other players who buy into this game, and it is a hobby and a game, but it does have a value point attached when Wizards of the Coast charges this much for these specialty cards. When you find one, you know you've hit basically a mini lottery ticket inside the game. You know the value. So to protect that value, Wizards of the Coast is unlikely wanting to devalue rare cards like this, just like the reserve list. It can't get reprinted. The value is protected. So if you can't reprint it but really want the value to be protected, why can't we just give it new artwork? Why can't we say, or change the wording of the reserve list to say, these cards can never be reprinted in their original form? By protecting that artwork and protecting the original way they are presented, you could allow for new cards to get printed, used by players in today's world of Magic the Gathering, allow them to experience it in some specialty formats, as specialty cards, however they want to do it. And again, yes, Wizards will benefit from this. They will make money doing this. If they gave us a modern vintage set of some kind, introducing all the original cards, yes, they would make a ton of money. If they brought it around every 5 years as kind of like an anniversary thing, yes, they'll make a ton of money. But they'd have to do it under certain circumstances so we understand it. It's got to be, it's going to be $10 a pack. You're going to play at your LGS or play at events, whatever it's going to be. Sure, I understand that. But the original artwork must be protected. You can never reprint Black Lotus the way it looked before. It always has to be a new form of art, because the original is the original. And as we've seen, original artwork cards do tend to hold their value. They're holding it long term. And it's not that I don't want the reserve list protected. Of course I do. But I do think things they need to evolve. They need to change over time. Because the last thing I want is for everyone to forget how to play the game. For new players to come in and never experience or have knowledge of reserve list cards unless they're educated by somebody who happens to know about them. I don't want to be that 80-year-old guy at assisted living playing Magic. Everyone goes, what game is that? And you're trying to explain to them. They go, I play Magic. I've never seen those things. And then it's a history moment. Instead of them saying, oh yeah, man, they reprinted the 50th anniversary of that. That is crazy. I think there's a way for the reserve list to be protected, but also coexist in an evolved Magic the Gathering world where new players can get to experience these cards. Because my current crisis in my brain is if Wizards of the Coast has control of things like Commander, and they eventually get to competitive Commander, or they evolve the game a little bit and casual becomes a little more serious, or some kind of ranked system, they can't allow those reserve list cards that are played in Commander to exist forever because they're not readily available to every player if you can't reprint them. If you can't have Time Twister available for people to be used in Commander, they're eventually going to ban it. The same with Metalworker, Mox Diamond, and many other cards. Yes, there are still tons of these cards out there. But as the player base expands, as new players come in, and they do get bought up and they do get added to collections, there'll be less of them available. And then eventually it will become a problem that will be dealt with harshly. They'll just ban it, make it easy. And then there's less ways that card can ever be played again. It affects the value, affects everyone's fun, and people who've used it for 20, 30 years at that point now feel like they've just been ripped off if they spent $8,000, $9,000 for an original Time Twister. But if you have a reissued Time Twister, some special edition, whatever you want to call it, but, it comes around every 5 years. Maybe there's only so many printed, whatever. It at least brings some supply to the market to allow it to continue to exist in its elevated form of being an expensive card. I don't know. Thoughts and feelings, put them out there, guys. Drop some comments in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about my idea of the reserve list. I'm curious to know what you guys think, because when we look at the value of these cards, the new ones are holding up really well, which means there is room for the reserve list. Guys, thanks again for hanging out. Thanks for being here with the Moxman today. Avatar, what a comeback sales record, man. This thing's like hyping up when normally sets go to die, like it's at the end. Instead, Avatar's ramping up. Be ready for it. Talk to you guys soon. Hey guys, a big shout out and thank you to the fantastic patrons of my channel. Without these patrons, daily uploaded content would be made just impossible. So thank you again to all the Patreon supporters I have out there who allow for this content to be created. Thanks again to, of course, my YouTube membership members. But don't worry guys, never fear, we will be back tomorrow with another video. Welcome back to the Ramble and the Jamble. It is insane to me to think you could get 3 dual land Savannas for the cost of one of these new confetti special foils, or the idea that the Soul Stone crazy edition, you could buy a Black Lotus and a couple of pieces of power. It has gotten to the point, at least in my brain, where new cards will definitely outpace reserve list cards, and it's by design. So the reserve list, if it doesn't want to get left in the dust and become some archaic piece of Magic history, if it wants to become the living history, like to go along with Magic, it's got to evolve. Because the new cards outpacing old cards, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm not sure it's a concern now, but for the future it could be. Players have always got to pay attention to that. You've invested a lot of money, you better protect it. Guys, thanks again for hanging out. Boomstick Edition, baby! Ramble in the jamble! My brain thinks crazy thoughts.